Welcome to How Avoiding One Conversation Could Cost You Everything. Mia gripped her coffee mug, staring at the frosted glass walls of her office. Outside, her team buzzed like usual, voices muffled by the door, but inside, it was deathly quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when everyone's avoiding the same thing. Brian. His name had become shorthand for trouble, snide comments in meetings, deadlines slipping because no one wanted to work with him. The team hadn't said it outright, but Mia could see it in their tired eyes and the way their energy drained whenever he walked into a room. She knew she needed to address it weeks ago, but she didn't. And now, the consequences were staring her in the face. An email popped up on her screen. Claire, her star performer. Mia, I'm sorry to say this, but I think it's time for me to move on. Can we talk? Thanks. Claire. Mia's stomach clenched. Claire? The one person she thought she could count on. If she was leaving, what did that say about Mia? About her leadership? It wasn't the first red flag. Brian's behavior had been festering for months. First, there were the sarcastic remarks, small enough to kind of brush it off, but sharp enough to sting. Then came the missed deadlines, the complaints from his peers, and still, Mia stayed silent. What would she even say? Brian, you're the problem. Everyone's miserable because of you. She couldn't picture it. Every time she rehearsed the conversation in her mind, it just spiraled and completely out of control. Brian firing back, accusing her of playing favorites, the team watching from the sidelines, waiting to see if she'd fall apart. Her fear wasn't just about Brian. It was about what he might expose. What if he said what she had been dreading? That she wasn't cut out for this. That her team didn't respect her. That she was failing. The phone buzzed again. Claire's follow-up. Do you have time today? I need to talk sooner rather than later. Mia felt her chest tighten. The clock on her desk blinked. 3:45 p.m. Time was slipping away. She needed to act, but instead of replying, she glanced at Brian standing in the corner of the bullpen, laughing with someone from another department like he didn't even have a care in the world. How can he be so confident while I feel like I'm unraveling over here, she thought. She turned back to her computer, staring at the draft email she'd been avoiding all day. The subject line mocked her. Can we chat about team dynamics? ? No, too cheesy. Okay. Performance feedback. Ugh, too formal. She deleted the draft. That night, Mia couldn't sleep. She tossed, she turned, the weight of the day pressing down on her chest. She dozed off for what felt like forever, but only a few hours had passed. It was only 2 a.m. She dragged herself out of the bed and walked to the kitchen for a late-night snack. She hated this time of night. The dark, the silence, the kind of quiet that leaves you alone with your thoughts. She leaned against the counter and stared into the darkness. She thought about Claire's resignation, about Brian's cockiness, about the sinking feeling in her gut every time her team avoided her gaze. The silence wasn't just around her, it was inside her, growing louder every single day. How did I let it get this bad? The next morning, Mia walked into the office, shoulders heavy with dread. Claire was waiting for her, coffee in hand, a sad smile on her face. Brian wasn't at his desk. Oh, good. She wasn't ready to face him yet. Mia, Claire began, I can't keep working in this environment. Mia swallowed hard. Claire, I'm so sorry. I know things haven't been easy. No. Claire interrupted. It's not about the work. It's about the culture. I feel like we're all walking on eggshells and nothing ever gets better. I need somewhere where people talk to each other, where problems don't just sit there and get swept under the rug. Each word was a blow, and Mia felt herself shrinking under Claire's gaze. That afternoon, Mia sat in her office, blinds drawn. The team outside moved in hushed tones. She could feel their tension. Her phone buzzed. Another email, this time from her boss. Mia, we need to talk about your team's performance. Can you come by my office at 4? The walls felt like they were closing in. She looked at the clock on her desk, 3:45 p.m. The same time she stared at yesterday, paralyzed. The same time she'd stared at a week ago, a month ago. Every time she knew she needed to act but didn't. She was just waiting for the end of the day to show up. The next day, Mia walked into the office, shoulders squared. She stopped at Brian's desk. Brian, can we talk in my office? He raised an eyebrow but followed her in, closing the door behind him. Mia's hands were trembling, but she clenched them into fists under her desk, forcing herself to steady her voice. Brian, I've noticed some behaviors that are impacting the team, and I want to have an honest conversation about how we move forward. She didn't know how the conversation would end, but for the first time in weeks, she felt the silence breaking. And when the silence breaks, everything changes. Have you ever caught yourself avoiding a tough conversation because it felt like it was too risky? Every time you avoid a hard conversation that you know that you need to have, you trade a moment of discomfort for the weight of regret. And that weight doesn't just go away, it follows you, growing heavier with every missed opportunity, and it robs you of levity. It's hard to laugh, connect, or even be creative when people are walking on eggshells, when you are walking on eggshells. I'm Dr. Heather Walker. I help leaders build contagious cultures. And today I'd like to show you the price that you're paying every time you avoid a tough conversation with someone on your team, and a frame that's gonna give you the courage that you need to do something about it. All right, let's talk about what it costs. When you avoid the tough stuff, your team notices. We know this. They might not say it, but they start wondering, can I count on them when it matters? And that doubt slowly eats away at trust. And once trust starts to crack, everything else begins to fall apart. And those cracks, they only get worse. Problems don't fix themselves. I've had super old cars in my lifetime, and what I have learned, I've learned the lesson the hard way, is that if you ignore a problem, it does not go away on its own. It only gets bigger and bigger, and it's more and more expensive to fix. Before you know it, at work, this small problem can start to build into a toxic work environment. So here's where it really can hit hard as a leader as well. The people that you care about the most, your best performers, they're not going to stick around. When they start to feel unsupported or they see that problems are being ignored, they're going to quietly start looking for a better place to work. And once they're gone, what do? You're left scrambling because guess what? It's like you're blindsided by this news. And it's not just about losing people, it's about what happens to the ones who stay. Avoiding conversations drives a wedge between you and your team, between them and each other. Each misunderstanding adds another brick to the wall until grace and goodwill are replaced by frustration and distance. And when people stop trusting each other, collaboration breaks down, silos form, ideas stop flowing, people start hoarding information, right? They start doing really weird things. And it's like everyone's rowing in different directions. They're all trying to figure out, how do we get to the end goal? And everyone is a captain of their own ship at this point, right? Every person for themselves. What's often overlooked is the growth that you're missing. Those uncomfortable conversations that you're avoiding, they're the same ones that could lead to breakthroughs for you, for the team, for your organization. And by avoiding these conversations, you're not just missing solutions, you're missing the chance to make things better. So let's also talk about what it costs you. I know all of that sounded like it costs you, but really, there are additional costs. Avoidance doesn't make the problem go away. It just makes it sit in your mind. It steals your focus. It drains your energy. How much time have you spent replaying that conversation in your head, rehearsing what you'd say, only to never say it, to have that insecure Issa Rae moment? For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, go to HBO or Max, whatever they're calling themselves these days, and check out the show Insecure. Their main character there, I love her. Her name's Issa. And she has lots of these moments where she holds her tongue. She is such a powerful woman with so much creativity, so much potential, and she holds back all the time. And she'll go home after one of these encounters where she just wanted to say something and wasn't sure what to say in the moment. And she'll start talking to herself in the mirror. She actually starts rapping in the mirror. It's like, I would have said this and I would have said that and I would have said this and this and this. And you don't want to have that. How much time have you wasted replaying a conversation that could have happened 30 seconds and you move on with your life? So when we avoid, we reinforce a cycle of avoidance. We're teaching ourselves and others that it's okay to look the other way. Over time, that habit becomes harder and harder to break, right? And the cycle gets stronger. It doesn't just cost you, it costs everyone. Have you ever felt stuck, just paralyzed by fear that you couldn't even remember a time when you felt confident? Because I can imagine right now you might be thinking, okay, I hear you, but yes, I still do that. I still replay the conversation. I still think about what I could have said. I still go home upset with myself because I didn't say what I should have said, should have said. And I don't remember anymore. I've done this so many times that I don't remember when I was confident. If you've been there, or if you are there right now, you're not alone. And today I'm going to help you find your courage, even if it feels like it's buried so deep down that you just lost it. It's gone, right? I'm going to help you find your precious, right? From Lord of the Rings. So I want to tell you about someone that I worked with, a leader who felt invisible in their own role. They were paralyzed by the thought of having tough conversations with their team because they felt like they had no authority, no power to back it up. They weren't even sure that anyone would really listen to them or take them seriously. And they told me, I don't even remember the last time that I felt confident. What if I make it worse? At first, they thought this idea of courage meant being bold, commanding the room, taking up space, and they were terrified of that. But as we talked, they started to see that courage can also be those quiet actions that you take. It's showing up to the meeting even when you feel out of place. It's choosing to try again even when you're scared. And in this leader's case, it was about finding the small, brave moments that they'd overlooked, because that's where their strength was hiding. So if you can't think of a time when you felt powerful, I want you to pause and rethink what power looks like to you. Courage isn't always a big, flashy moment. Sometimes it's as simple as saying yes to a challenge, even when it terrifies you. It's showing up when you don't feel ready. Think about this. Was there a moment when you started a new job and you felt completely out of your depth, but you went in anyway? Or maybe it was a time you had to tackle a really tough project and you weren't sure how you were going to manage it, and somehow you figured it out. Maybe it was standing up for someone when no one else did. Those are your quiet acts of courage, and that's where it starts. Not with perfection, but with the decision to take the first step. So if you're in a safe space to do this, I want you to close your eyes. And if not, just focus on the sound of my voice. Every time you show up, even when it's hard, you're proving to yourself that you're stronger than you think. Think back to one moment, just one, when you did something brave. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking. Maybe it was walking into an unfamiliar situation. Maybe it was speaking up when it would have been easier to stay quiet. Maybe it was saying no to protect your boundaries. What did it feel like to take that step? How did you carry yourself? How did it feel afterward? How did it feel knowing that you did it, even if it wasn't perfect? I want you to hold on to that feeling. I want you to lock it in, because that is your courage. It's always been there. My final thought for you today is that levity isn't just about cracking jokes or having fun. It's about creating an environment where everyone can breathe a little bit easier. By addressing the hard things, you clear the path for things like joy and connection and creativity to take root. So the question isn't just, what happens if I avoid this conversation? It's, what could happen if I have it? I want to thank you for spending this time with me today. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe, because we're going to be tackling these challenges together. My goal is one challenge, one solution for the podcast going forward. And if you're on Instagram, I want you to follow the Lead with Levity page for behind the scenes content, tips, and inspiration to keep you moving forward.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lead with Levity podcast. To get resources mentioned in this episode and find out what we're all about, check us out at leadwithlevity.com.